Our wrap-up speaker, Mike Kenn, is with Georgians for Better Transportation, a very, very active group here in Georgia that's played an important role of recent in the evolution of prioritizing their projects. And I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Thank you. I know we've been in here a while, and I don't have a PowerPoint, and I do have some brief remarks, because I want to make sure that you all have time to answer some questions. I'm the current president of Georgia for Better Transportation. I've been leading this organization for the past 3 years, and we're a statewide transportation advocacy group. Basically, what we do is that we interact with the transportation agencies, the Department of Transportation, Rose's organization, RETA, the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority, the ARC, the General Assembly, and the Governor's Office to recommend best practices on how addressing our statewide transportation needs. What you saw from our first 3 speakers were a lot of system-type improvements that can relieve congestion. But what I want to talk to you about a little bit today is to go ahead, how do you set up the correct political environment for them to be appropriately considered for approval? And we're following the lead of basically, I'll be the 3rd time that the speakers referenced the state of Texas, is how you do that, because they did this quite some time ago. Is to go ahead and change the way that we prioritize projects. In the past, our MPO, like all MPOs, didn't really go ahead and have a defined way to go ahead and pick projects. In Atlanta, what we would do is that we would go ahead and get a list of projects that were on the state transportation plan and from the local governments. We would go ahead and throw them in a basket. We would go ahead and attach a price tag to them, and we would model them for air quality and congestion relief, and that ended up becoming our regional 25-year regional transportation plan on a fiscally restricted basis. But they never really did one thing that was really fundamental and pretty basic and has a common sense approach to it, is that, and I call it like business 101. It says when you're starting a new business, the first thing that you do when you start a new business is that you go ahead and set a goal on where you want that business to be in 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25 years, and then you develop a plan that actually achieves that goal. So let's apply those same principles to congestion. Let's go ahead and set a congestion relief goal. Let's determine what our level of congestion is today, and then go ahead and set a goal on how much better we want congestion to be in 25 years. And then let's go ahead and develop a plan that actually achieves that goal. Now, that was very significant here in metropolitan Atlanta, because in the past, those principles had never been applied. And when people would go to the General Assembly and go ahead and say, hey, we've got a funding problem in the state here, we can't meet our transportation needs, I said, we need to increase transportation funding. And they would say, well, okay, do you have a plan that will achieve that goal? And they say, no, we do not. So we got the ARC, in the first time in the history of the state of Georgia, we actually got the Georgia Department of Transportation, the State Road and Tollway Authority, the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority, and the Atlanta Regional Commission, the MPO, to actually sit down at a table with 2 representatives from each organization and sit down and develop a congestion relief goal, and also develop a project prioritization criteria. And they did that. They sent a goal from about 1.35. We were at a system of about 1.58 or 1.62. We had some systems within the system that were 2.0 over. They also developed a new project prioritization scoring. In the past, the Atlanta Regional Commission only gave congestion relief 10% out of a possible 100% scoring for congestion relief. And they had other 9 criteria, and they got other values too. We recommended that congestion relief should actually get 100% of the scoring, because they're the primary driver that results in safety and also results in air quality, because if traffic's moving, air quality improves, and also has great economic development ramifications associated with it. We didn't get the committee to go ahead and recommend 100%, but we got them to 70%. So now in the ARC prioritization criteria, All projects that are being considered will get 70% of the scoring will be related to congestion relief. And that's a significant public policy position taken by the ARC, and they're currently updating their new regional transportation plan, 25-year, that it'll be, I guess they're getting ready to vet it right now with all the transportation agencies, and then they'll make it available for public comment at the beginning of the first year. But it'll be the first time that a congestion relief goal has actually been used in the development of the RTP. They'll also use it in development of the fiscally unconstrained RTP, which is more significant than the 25-year RTP, because the 25-year RTP by law has to be fiscally constrained, but the fiscally unconstrained does not. So that'll identify what the funding shortfall is that we at GBT can take down to the General Assembly and say, hey, we now have a plan that actually shows that you can reduce congestion, and here's the plan that does that, and this is how much it's going to cost. So now you've got justification for our policymakers to seriously consider addressing that inequity, and so that's what we've been doing at GBT. So we wanted to go ahead and put the mechanism in place that would create the justification, that would create the support for us to go to the General Assembly to get funding. Now, this isn't a funding committee here, but as all states are, we're all pressed for dollars, and with other system or partnerships like public-private and things like that are assist that. But what we're doing in 2007 is that we're actually going to be submitting legislation that I can't talk about publicly yet to go ahead and address the funding and inequity. What I also want to talk about a little bit too is this quote sprawl problem that everybody kind of talks about, because they attribute sprawl to congestion. And actually, when you go ahead and I'll use Atlanta, which I'm most familiar with, as an example where sprawl really doesn't contribute to congestion, where when you look at Atlanta, we're the least densified major city in the United States. And if we were densified at the same level as like the city of St. Louis, our traffic congestion would actually be worse than LA's is right now. Over the past 25 years, our vehicle miles have increased 180%, but our system capacity at the same time has only increased 18%. We just haven't kept up pace with the growth here. And the only reason that we're not more congested today is because of sprawl, is because people have moved out, and we don't have one central business center where everybody commutes to in and out. You go ahead and take a look at the issues related in London. The reason why London has so much congestion is because probably 90% of the working population goes to one destination to work every day. What you've seen happen here in metropolitan Atlanta, we've got downtown Atlanta, we've got Perimeter, which almost has as many jobs now as downtown Atlanta does now. You've got Windward Parkway up to the north, it's got like 70 or 80,000 jobs to it. You've got the Cobb Galleria area that's got all the jobs. So what you need to do in order to alleviate congestion is don't prohibit sprawl, let it happen naturally, let the market dictate it, and let these business centers develop outside of your central core business. And that'll keep congestion from happening. I give a real fundamental example of how this quote smart growth doesn't really work well. And it's, again, another common sense approach. Let's go ahead and take a 100-acre parcel of property, and let's say that we have one home per acre, which is 100 homes, and in each home we have one car, so we have 100 cars there. So now let's go ahead and implement, quote, smart growth strategies, and we're going to take 30% of that defined area, and we're going to develop it at a density of 15 to 1. So in that 30-acre area, we're now going to put 450 units. Now let's go ahead and bring transit to that 450 units, and then let's use an absurdly high number and say that 50% of those people within that defined area are going to use transit exclusively for their commuting needs, which means we'll take 225 of them and put them on transit. What's left over is the other 225 that are going to use their cars. Let's take the 30 cars that we eliminated when we implemented smart growth strategies, and then take the 70 cars that are remaining. Now you have 295. Basically, we've just increased traffic by 3 without any system capacity. So be very careful when they start talking about these smart growth strategies here, how it's going to reduce congestion. Transit by itself does not reduce congestion. along with other system improvements, it contributes to it. But what transit really does, and what I try to profess it as, is that it's an economic development tool. Since 80% of your transit riders are transit dependent, that means the only way that they can commute from point A to point B is by transit. If you go ahead and develop a comprehensive transit system that allows them to get access to higher, better paying jobs, it has a direct impact on improving their quality of life, which has a direct impact on increasing, economic development in the area where it is. So transit is a key component to a overall strategy and a comprehensive transportation network, and needs to be applied where it can be. But don't get caught up with the argument that people think that the way that we're going to go ahead and reduce congestion is that we've got to go ahead and build transit. And you saw what Bob showed you, is that how much it costs, especially fixed rail system, whether it's light or heavy rail, to go ahead and compared to standard roadway capacity. So that's all I have. I know we're running a little pressed for time. I want to make sure that you all have enough time for questions for me or Rosa or the other presenters. So thank you. Appreciate it.